What up? What up? Welcome to another week of the Barbell Effect Podcast. Today, we have been blessed to have the opportunity to record with my friend from my business mentorship. Her name is Marissa, but she goes by Link. For this episode and the episode launching next week, we will be chatting with Link. So today we are going to be talking a little bit about the transition from athlete to lifestyle. We also talk about a little bit about recovering from an injury, and we get to hear a little bit about Link's birth story and the welcoming of her son. So you'll notice the reason why I'm doing this intro is because we were guests on Link's episode or podcast this week. She also has her own podcast. And so I cut out the beginning part where me, Gavin, and Zach intro a little bit about who we are, because you guys already know that and do not need a recap. And if you do, go ahead and head to our intro and hot seat episodes. You'll hear more background about us, but I wanted to clip that out just to make it more convenient for the people who don't need to hear it again. But without further ado, please enjoy these next two episodes. They are some really good ones, and it's nice to get a different perspective. Link is very good at what she does, so please make sure to go give her a follow. I believe she'll be dropping her handles as well, and I will also link those in the show notes. So enjoy the episodes. If you or somebody else that you know would be a good fit to be the next guest on our episode, please reach out. You know our email, it's linked in our show notes, or you can reach out to one of us or our podcast Instagram and send us a DM. So enjoy.
It is crazy too, though, to see like how you said too about the whole meal plan thing. Because I know I did my first bodybuilding competition, my first and only. It was a one and done situation. It's not the lifestyle that I'm looking for. But I did have a coach who was completely unqualified. Like he was not the vibe, put it that way. And the meal plan, I distinctly remember like eating egg whites and fish and just like crying as I'm shoveling it down my throat over my trash can because I was literally puking it back up. I was full blown like rejecting this food. And it was one of the hardest experiences of my life. But then I think back onto it of like, I think I went that route because of my transition out of sports was so hard. Like I didn't fully like embrace the post-athletic lifestyle. I was still like, well, I spent my whole life competing. I need to continue to compete. And, how can I even do that other than a fitness related activity? Because I was like, well, there's no way I'm going back and playing like a bar league softball. That's not for me. And I had just come off of injuries too. So I know we've all, obviously you guys have come from multiple sports backgrounds as well, of just like training for your sport. And I know Gavin, you said it, like training for cheer versus training for yourself and like having that transition. So I do want to dive into a couple different perspectives here because you guys all have your own like specialty in this area as well as your own experience. So Gavin, do you want to kick us off? Because I know one of my biggest struggles was, like I said, coming off of that injury and rehabbing from that injury. I spent months. Mine, like kind of quick story here. I was jumping rope and I like passed out and everything went black. Apparently I was still moving around and doing things, but like, I don't remember any of it. And I went home that night, had a horrible headache, woke up the next morning and my friend was like, you're going to the ER. Like something's not right. And they told me I could have died and that they thought I had a brain aneurysm and then I need to stop playing immediately and everything just needs to end. So that's how I ended my athletic career of softball and come to rehab. And they're like, you don't have a brain aneurysm. Like you have a joint in your neck is messed up. Like you needed to have been doing neck stretches for the past 6 months, not getting EKGs and everything else. So I know I was super intimidated doing it on my own after having such a traumatic experience, like going from sports to my just like personal fitness journey. So what advice do you have for someone who is looking to just move well in life after sports, like feel like an athlete in life after sport?
Well, first of all, glad you're okay, because that's
Thank you.
horrible. Yeah, I mean, that's not what most people envision as the end of their athletics career. And for you
Right.
to So it ended up not being a brain aneurysm. You just had an issue with your neck.
Yeah, they thought that's what it was, and they're like, we have to run all these tests. Like I had literally, I'm talking 3 to 4 months of just nothing but
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah, we think it's this, and then they were like, yeah, there's all your tests are clear, you're good.
Well, I'm thankful for
Thanks.
that. And
Right.
at that point, it's like better be safe than sorry. And that's probably the
Yeah.
mentality all the docs that you were dealing with were, going by. So happy that that's all it was. I know it was probably very traumatic for you at the time. So that's not fun. Yeah, that transition can be very hard for a lot of people. And it's something that not a lot of people are ready for, and they don't really have time to prepare for it. Their entire life is generally focused around this sport, and all of a sudden it's over. And that sport has been a part of their identity for a long time, and essentially it's being just ripped away out of nowhere. So a lot of
Mhm.
people, they can get into coaching, they can get into, like you did with bodybuilding, and we all kind of did with bodybuilding, but it's not the same. And you'll always kind of want that feeling back of competing for whatever your sport was. It's always going to be a little bit different. Something that I know I struggled with, and I think you guys all probably will be able to attest to this as well, is the changes that happen with your body after you're done being an athlete. You're going from, especially if you're a college athlete, you're going from walking to your classes all day, going to practice in the afternoon, you got lifts in earlier in the morning, and then you go home, you sleep, and that's it. And you are constantly moving. You're probably in the, by just from your looking at somebody, probably in the best shape of their life, whether or not that's actually true or not, but like, they look like they're in shape. So when you stop moving so much, you graduate college or whatever, and you're out of your sport, and you're not walking around nearly as much throughout your, to get to your classes, so on and so forth, you can gain a lot of body fat, which I'm sure is something, just from looking at, peeking through your profile, is something that I feel like you talk about a lot with your clients. And that's a very real thing, and something I experienced actually as well. Going from practicing all the time, and then I'm not moving as much. I'm still working out 5, 6 days a week, but I'm starting to gain body fat. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Well, I've had abs my entire life since middle school. Why do I have a little chub on my stomach now? And that was a really hard realization for me. And realizing over the past how many years, and digging into the nutrition side of things, and just getting a little bit more education throughout my master's degree of healthy body fat levels, so on and so forth. I was probably fairly unhealthy during my collegiate athletics career, because I was trying to maintain my six pack all the time, because that's all I cared about. I'm like, I want to get big, but I don't want to get too big that I lose my abs. So that was something that affected me personally a lot, when I was in grad school. And I remember diving into nutrition a lot more and trying to hone in on it, to not only, better myself and educate myself about it, but it was probably a little bit disordered too. I don't, not necessarily in the, DSM-5, you have disordered eating, description of it, but that's something that I definitely got a lot more into and dedicated a lot more of my time to, because it was something that did bother me. I will say now, personally, it's something I find I just want to be healthy, and I can still have goals that deal with aesthetics, but I understand that the body fat that I have is probably a healthy level, and my body actually needs that. And that's something that takes a lot of time and effort to be able to realize, and a lot of people are not able to do that on their own.
Yeah. So, and I think with it is like when you have these performance-based goals, the aesthetic comes with it. Like when we focus so heavily of I want to be this amount of body fat and I want to do this amount of, like I want to weigh this amount on this much on the scale, that kind of stuff. Like that's when we get so wrapped up in it that it's like we're not making any progress. I'm frustrated with myself. Why can't I do these things? I want to have this goal, but I want to have a big butt, but I also want to have abs, and I want to be big, but I want to have abs. Like it's this constant back and forth where instead of like, let's just focus on performing and performing well and moving well and like not going through your day like the typical like creaks and groans of the former athlete. Like we all crack and pop in ways that we probably shouldn't, and not just normalizing that, like going about it of like, how can I just feel better day to day and focus on the performance based goals with that. Katie and Zach, do you have anything to add of just like whether it be performance based or just moving well? Anything with that, or your experience with that?
I think my experience is going to be a little bit different from theirs because I was never really an athlete growing up or my entire life. Cheer was the only sport that I did, and I only did it for 1 year. So it was never, I started off mainly just doing it like personally, just for fun. And when I got into bodybuilding, it was the year before I went on the cheer team. So, and even when I was on the cheer team, like that was still my main focus was bodybuilding. Cheer was second to bodybuilding for me, just because I was just doing it for fun. It wasn't like a sport that I've always done or that I was like super into like they were. I just thought it was fun, and I met a new friend group in college, and that's really all it was. And bodybuilding was still my main sport. So I can't speak on that exactly or have those similar experiences that they do. But I think there is some crossover coming out of a bodybuilding competition because it's in a way it can be kind of like that ending a sport, because you get in probably the best shape of your life for essentially 1 day. And like there's that build up where you keep getting better and better and better and looking better, but then you also start feeling worse and worse and worse as you lead up to it. And then once it's done, unless you have like a plan in place after it, chances are you're going to go back to all the habits you were doing before, and you're going to put on a lot of excess body fat, sometimes maybe even more than you started with before you started a prep. And then that can lead to then those negative feelings that people might feel after they leave like their sport, like a college athlete would, where they don't have that same body composition and they are dealing with those feelings as well. And I think that's where the crossover kind of comes in, because the focus after the show shouldn't be necessarily on like what's next. It should be on recovery from that show. So putting on a little bit of body fat, as long as you don't have like extra, like you're not doing a couple shows like in a row, that's a different story. But like after you're done for the season or the year or whatever you're doing before you go into your next phase, it's important to have that kind of healing phase where you're letting your body recover after that stressful experience. You're putting on a little bit of body fat, you're starting to eat more, and a lot of people then have that mental struggle with it because they have more fat than they did a month ago. And it's that same kind of thing. And it's really just focusing on mindset and being able to figure out like what your values are and kind of shifting them from show prep to what's next.
Yeah, for sure. Katy, anything?
Yeah, I think I can relate to, well, I'm just trying to think back of when I did transition from athlete out of college into just everyday life. And then since that point in time until now, and there's actually been a couple seasons that I've gone through and had to just navigate. So first being that when I was growing up, basically my main sports were cheerleading, dance, gymnastics. I did softball a little bit, I did track a little bit, but my main sports were those three, like more aesthetic sports. And when you are, at least I think the world is changing a little bit now for the better, but back when I was in middle school and high school, like nobody gave a shit if the cheerleaders and dancers like went and lifted in the weight room. Like there was no need for that in people's eyes because we weren't seen as like an actual sport. We were seen as more of a sideline. And so I never really got that background in lifting. And I think, like I said, there is a shift happening where they are getting people, even in those sports, into the weight room. I mean, now with cheerleading being an officially recognized sport of the Olympics, I think that is also bringing about change at the lower levels, which is really, really great to see. But I never really knew like how to go in the gym and train properly, what to do. I didn't really know that strength was needed to do dance and cheerleading in that way until I was in college. And I know I've mentioned this on our episodes of the podcast, but I actually started lifting because of Gavin. I wanted to talk to him. And so I wanted him to help me out with lifting, but also I wanted to be better at cheer. Like I knew that that would help me in my position. I was what's called a mid. So if you have like a 2.5 high pyramid, it's basically like someone on the ground, me doing a shoulder stand. So I'm standing on someone's shoulders, and then somebody else is either on my arms or on my leg, because my leg is up like and bent. So it requires not only like balance, but you're basically a flyer and a base. So it does require a lot of strength as well, because you are holding somebody, whether it's on your leg or on your forearm. And so I knew I wanted to be better because I loved that position. That was actually my favorite thing, was being the mid position in pyramids. And I just knew that I really wanted to get good at that position so that I would be like on the competition mat and be in that position more often. And so, but the whole reason why I started, it was to talk to Gavin, and then I actually just like fell in love with it. So I kind of taught myself. But if you think about it, people who don't actively like go out and teach themselves how to lift, especially if they are in a sport like dance and cheerleading, they don't really get taught like how to lift properly. But even the people who do get taught how to lift and they're going to their, 2-a-day lifts or their team lifts, like you're being taught to lift for your sport. You're not being taught how to lift like for just everyday benefits, or learn to do this now so that you're able to do everyday living activities, when you're older. And, we're not really taught the other benefits, except like you have to do this so that you aren't the weakest link on your team. So transitioning was really hard, because in a different way, because I actually, because of my major and because I went out there and taught myself how to lift, like those things didn't really come like hard to me, because I just learned kind of like how to program for myself. And since then I've obviously learned a lot, but I was able to still do that. It was more so just the body image aspect of it. And you guys already touched on this a little bit, that when you go from doing your sport every single day to not, you actually have to put in effort and think about it, and maybe focus a little bit more on your nutrition and other things like your stress and your water intake and your sleep, things that you didn't necessarily think about when you were in your sport, especially being a college student and wanting to also like go out and be social as well. So that was a little bit different for me. But since then, I've actually had to deal with some different types of transitions. So when we moved to Kentucky, that's when I did like most of my prep for my show. And so Zach was actually my coach. Like Link, I don't think you knew that, but Zach was my coach for my one and only show so far. And I went into it for the exact same reason that I think you did. I missed competing. I'm a very competitive person. I wanted to work towards something. I wanted to have like a deadline goal. Like I wanted to work towards something specific rather than just, oh, I want to build muscle or I want to lose fat. Like I wanted to work towards something. So that's, I think, why I kind of leaped into the show. And I was just very curious about that world too and how it worked. So that was an experience that I grew a lot in. And then when we moved back, so right after we moved back from Kentucky, it was like spring of 2021. I did my show that summer. So I had a few months to prep, like when we were back home. And then after that, I didn't really have any plans to do another show. So and that was was coming off of the show, kind of like Zach said, that was a lot harder for me than actually prepping, especially because unlike you, Link, I did have a great coach. I had somebody that had my health in their best interest too. And so when I was in person, and that's when I started in-person training. So I was active pretty much all day, because I was either demoing workouts, I was walking around the gym, I was lifting myself like during my break, and I was super active, and it was really easy for me to kind of remain in shape, and it was a huge part of my life. And then when I transitioned to online training, I kind of hit a different type of transition, and I was sitting a lot of the day. And that's something that I'm still kind of working on, is like trying to remind myself, like, go up and go for a walk. I do walk to the gym any chance that I can get, but I didn't even have to focus on it as much as I do now, like in-person training versus online training, because now I actually have to focus on how to get more movement in my day, because I have a quote unquote desk job. And so that has been a learning curve as well, because I have noticed that it just came a lot easier for me to remain in shape. I didn't have some aches and pains that I have since experienced with like my back and everything. So it's been a process, but that's kind of a different type of transition that I've experienced in like a different season of life than athletics. But I would say the biggest issue or like hurdle that I had to overcome transitioning from athlete to lifestyle was definitely like the body image aspect, and the fact that I actually had to actively think about how to live a healthier lifestyle and incorporate that in my day-to-day life.
Yeah. And I think too, I know for me, maybe you guys can agree that you had this experience as well, but one thing for me was I was in a sport where we were told to lift and we were in the gym consistently, and we were like, hey, we need, powerful hips, we need explosiveness, like we need you powering through. Put it this way, I went into college, I'm 5'7". I was 118 pounds my freshman year, going into my freshman year, because I was at that point in high school where I was like, I need to be super thin. The thin girls are the fast girls. Like I want to be the fast one on the team. I went into college and my coach was like, honey, like you are going to put on some weight here. So I went from 118 pounds, 5'7", to 150 pounds in the first 3 months. So I came home from college for winter break and none of my clothes fit. I had to buy all new pants because my thighs literally like doubled in, I shouldn't say my thighs, my quads doubled in size. And I was so much stronger. And I thought in those years leading up to college, like I'm in shape, like I'm in great shape. I have abs, like I feel good. And then I got into my freshman year and I was like, whoa, I have been missing out because this is a whole new world to me and I love this. And we were training really freaking hard. And then I was able to maintain that weight all the way through college. Well, then when I transitioned out of college, I did lose a little bit of weight coming off of that injury. I did lose some muscle mass and that kind of stuff. So then I started getting in this like mindset of like, I need to be what I was in college. Like that's when I felt the best. I need to get back to that, constantly training to be at that intensity or to look that way and to feel that way. And it was just like it got to a point where I felt like I wasn't going anywhere and I wasn't making that progress. And I think part of me was like, I'm going to do this bodybuilding competition because one, I miss the competitiveness, but this side of me was also saying like, you're going to look better, you're going to be shredded, you're going to feel really, really good. And I had no like real like understanding of what I was getting myself into. I was literally just going into it like, this sounds like fun. Like I remember I DM'd this like random girl from my area and I was like, yo, you do bodybuilding, like who's your coach, is it fun? And she was like, yeah, this guy's great. Like she obviously had a very different experience than I had. But going into that, like you said, completely different transition from just like life after sport. But I know for me it was like I had all of this time as a coach with a team. Like I remember stepping foot in the gym by myself and I was like, now what? Like, where's the whiteboard that tells me what to do? I have to plan my own workouts now. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And like you said, like, you're so used to training a specific way for your sport. So then when you have to train for yourself, it's kind of weird. And like, I did have a good strength and conditioning coach in college. He did teach us a lot about form, but some of it was just expected of us to know. So like, I was kind of just like following the seniors and following the juniors and hoping that what I was following was going to be beneficial. So then post athletic career, I'm graduated now, I'm getting my PT certification and I'm like, okay, this is different. And I think it's one of those things of like the experience is what teaches you so much more than anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really good point, at least in my experience and the people that I've interacted with. I think a lot of people are striving to be at their high school weight or their college weight. I mean, even at my part-time job serving, I hear people say that all the time. If they bring up, if I'm overhearing them just talking at the table or something, I hear a lot of people just wish that they were in their college or high school shape. And in my opinion, it's like, why would you want to, like, I get if you were at a point in life where you thought you were in better shape, like you want to be back there, but it's like, let's move forward, not backward. And I think so many times people are so focused on looking back and like what used to be that keeps them from moving forward or getting to a point where they're in shape, in different shape, because you might have obviously like an adult job now, you might have a kid, you might have a family. It's like you're not going to be in college shape because you're not college you anymore. And you can get back into shape, but let's focus on like being a healthier version of who you are now and not who you were like in college. Did you want to touch at all on kind of the mentality around recovering from your injury, or did you want to, we could
Yeah, I
do that?
realized I didn't touch on that at all.
Yeah, we can do that. Do
Okay.
you want me to start it off?
Sure. Yeah.
So one big transition out of that was like the mental component as well. So like for me, a lot of it was, you know, how can I just get back? How can I get back to being what I was before? And that mental hurdle of like, I didn't know what was wrong with me for so long that like when I finally did have answers, it was almost like I didn't trust that I actually had the answers until I was fully complete with that rehab and was just like, okay, now I'm feeling good again. But like I was so timid. I was scared. I was intimidated to do things and do things solo. So like again, grew up with coaches, then transitioned to having a physical therapist with me anytime that I was doing any sort of movement to fully solo. So it was like, one, how the hell do I exercise by myself? And two, am I going to do it in a safe way where I'm not going to get hurt? And yes, I have the experience and I have the background knowledge, but it was still this like doubt in myself that I was actually going to be able to go through that and go through it successfully without putting myself back in another physical therapy office.
Yeah, that's something that is hard for physical therapists in general. I'll say, as a rehab specialist, being a PT, you don't get to work with people back to athletics a lot, which is something that I love as an athletic trainer, being able to, you get to see the acute things and you get to work with people through the acute phases, so the beginning phases of an injury, but you actually are specialized in returning people to their sport or to their activity, to their active daily life. That includes being active. Whereas a lot of physical therapists, if they go through insurance, which the vast majority do, they get told what they can and cannot do, and you only get so many visits before it runs out. You don't get it paid for anymore, and they're saying, okay, you can live your daily life now without playing softball for your sake. Okay, you're out of the office now. That's all we can do for you. And that's really hard on people like yourself. So like, you had your injury and then you were done playing sports. So you didn't have anybody to teach you what to do throughout your, how to program for yourself, how to get yourself back to actually being an active person compared to just being a normal person who, doesn't have your condition that you were dealing with. So as an athletic trainer, that's something I pride myself in, that like I get to do compared to other rehab personnel. And don't get me wrong, they can do that, and a lot of them do, but usually it's a cash-based practice and not a lot of PTs and chiros and people like that want to do that. But that is exactly what I want to do, because I want to get people back to their activity that they love, not just their daily life. But yeah, it can be really intimidating because, like you said, you've had everything planned out for you in regard to your fitness your entire life, and now you don't have anybody to teach you anything. So you're scrapping and looking for anything that can help you, and then that's when you fall for all the bullshit out there, the bodybuilding.com forums and the trainers, and then everybody, like Zach was talking about, the bodybuilding coaches in high school who are like, yep, here's your meal plan, and it's here's your boiled chicken, broccoli, and rice with no seasoning.
3 meals a day.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
And stay away from artificial sweeteners and don't do upright rows because you're going to hurt your shoulders. That BS. But
That was literally my bodybuilding coach, like everything you just described. So just
well, I mean, it's all things that we've kind of, individually talked about on our specific socials and talked about in the podcast, like things that grind our gears individually. And yeah, those people really exist, and it just really pisses us off because all we want to do is help people. And we feel like, folks who talk about things like that, they only make they only make the average fitness journey harder, and they only make it feel more impossible. And all we want to do is help people to be the best version of themselves throughout their entire lives. And those coaches again just make it so the fitness community is exclusive to the people who might know what they're talking about more so, or have the genetics to just look good on their own. Big rant there.
I'm all for the rants though, because and it's just like the mindset side of things, and then it gets twisted, right? So like you go in with this one mindset, and then you have maybe a negative experience like I had, and it completely shifts everything. Like for the longest time, it took me a while to like not have, I don't want to say a judgmental view, but that's the only word that's like coming to mind. But like it clouded, a foggy, a judgmental view towards that sport. Like I have so much respect for the people that can do it, but I have that respect now because after I got out of it, I was like, that was misery. I felt so weird. I felt so uncomfortable. I don't like this. I had a bad experience. How am I going to ever look at this sport the same again? Like how do people do multiple shows? And it just never, like, it took me some time to get over that mindset obstacle too, of just like having that negative experience, whether it be through injury or through just like a straight up bad experience, and being able to work through that and turn it into something positive. So like another example was after I graduated, I got a job at just a commercial gym, got promoted to a different location. And while I was on the way, so I taught a class at my first one, and I remember it because I'm like the timing was so bad for this situation to even take place. I taught a class at the first gym, left, went to the second gym. So I was technically like running late to my typical shift. And as I was stopped making a left into the parking lot, someone was on his phone and rear-ended me and totaled my car, sent me to the hospital. I needed shoulder surgery. It was this like whole shebang. So like even transitioning out of that injury of like, all right, I had a severe injury post college life. A couple years, actually not even a couple years later, I graduated in May. That accident happened in August. So a couple months later, I finally get better, and then bam, here's another accident. Here's another injury to recover from. And that can also like have this like cloudy idea of like what my fitness is going to look like, what my mindset is going to look like, how I'm moving. And like now I'm a mom to an 8-month-old, and a very large 8-month-old at that. So like lifting him up, a workout, holding him to the point my biceps are burning, a workout. But I wouldn't have been able to do those things if I didn't have the right mindset to push through those injuries.
Yeah, and that can be especially hard at that point too, because you're out of that, you're an active person, you're a fit person, but you're not where you were back in college. So having a shoulder surgery, I mean, that can take you out for a long time, and that can affect your mental health even more at that point too, because you're like, all I want to do is just go work out a little bit, and I can't do anything right now because, I mean, a lot of people don't know, but when you have, depending on the surgery, but if you have a shoulder surgery, a lot of times you're out of commission for a long time, at least several weeks. And I'm sure you experience that. And that can take a big toll if lifting and just being active is a part of your life. And then I'm sure the same, I obviously can't speak for this myself, but for when you had your baby, like that takes you out of commission from the gym for a while. Like you can train up, as much as you feel like you can while you're pregnant, but as soon as you have the kid, it's like you're out, like you got to take care of your body right now and just heal. So I can't even imagine what toll that can take on you mentally, if that is a big part of your life.
I could talk about the birth story for hours. That was another doozy because of how big he was. But that was another one. Like they told me after I was done, so I needed stitches. I had a full, issue, and they were like, "Hey, you're gonna be down and out for the minimum like 6 weeks, but you're looking more at 12. Like you're gonna be down on bed rest for 12 weeks." And I was like,
how big was he when he was
he
born?
was 9 pound, no,
Ah,
9 pounds 11 ounces. He was almost 10 pounds.
Ooh,
oh my God.
He's a big boy.
if that's how big my baby is, my first baby, I'm only having one.
Oh, it was one of those like comments in the delivery room. It was like, so long story short, he got stuck, so they needed to vacuum him out, and it popped off the first time, so it looked like a murder scene in there. And then they finally got him out, and he was all like beat up looking.
Yeah.
But luckily he was a-okay. I took most of the beating. But yeah, 9 pounds, almost 11 ounces, and 20 some inches long.
Ooh,
20 3/4.
that is a big baby.
Yeah,
Dang.
he's a large boy. But even then I looked at my postpartum recovery as like, I'm gonna be back sooner than you think I'm gonna be back, and like really making sure that I was resting to the best of my ability. And like even after the car accident, like I approached the physical therapy for that as like, all right, I'm getting out of here sooner than you tell me I'm getting out of here. And I did. I got cleared 2 weeks prior, or 2 weeks earlier than they estimated when I first went in. They were like, all right, you're looking at like 8 to 10 weeks, potentially 12. And I was like, mm-mm.
That's the
I got done in
competitive side of
6.
you. You're like, yeah, you say 12 weeks, I'm gonna be out of here in 10.
Literally, I was like, yeah, no, we're not having that. And at that point, so that one was like partially covered by insurance, but I was still paying $75 out of pocket every visit. So I was like, yeah, no, honey, we are not doing this for 12 weeks. I'm sorry. Like, I
But
know you gotta pay your bill. No.
that's good though. I mean, that mindset has not only saved you money in that aspect, but just saved, you probably got better than the average person would have, not only because of the shape that you were in starting, but just your mentality about, attacking each session like it's a workout, and, improving yourself each time you go. And that can go a long ways, because the vast majority of therapy and rehab is your mentality about it. If you think it's going to work, it's probably going to work. If you don't think it's going to work, you're wasting your time and money.
Yeah. And I think even just having that mindset across the board can be a game changer. So whether it's you're recovering from an injury, or, maybe it's just a really busy season of life, and, work just shit hits the fan sometimes in life, and just being able to work through those obstacles with that positive mindset can really be an absolute game changer. Katy and Zach, do you have any like client experiences with this, or like how you've helped clients through that? Have you experienced it yourself even?
I've never really had any major injuries or clients
Lucky.
with any.
You're the only one, man.
Yeah.
Like what?
Like I said,
Yeah.
I was never like
That's
a sport,
true.
like into sports at
That's-
all, and it was all just like my own stuff. Like I broke my foot once when I kickboxed in high school, but that was like way at the start of my journey. So like I would still like be in like my weightlifting gym class, and like I'd still hit like upper body and stuff, because I could just sit on the bench and do that at least. But like I never really had anything that was bad that took me out.
I'm jealous. Honestly, I'm jealous.
I did have an ACL and meniscus tear in was that my first year on the team, Gavin?
Mhm.
Yeah, my first year on the team. And I think there was a few things that led up to it, but I also think that one of the bigger things was that my quads were stronger than my hamstrings, which makes sense because I never wanted to work hamstrings. Like I did not like it at the time. But also a couple months before the actual tear happened, when we were having open gym, I was dropped, kind of like, not dropped, but we fell out of a set and I kind of landed weird and it hurt my knee. Like my knee kind of bothered me for like maybe a week or so, and then I was fine. But then a couple months down the road is when I had my tear. And actually I tore my ACL at state on the competition mat during our routine. And I tried to get up and walk to the front of the mat to finish, because I didn't really have much to do in the second half of the routine. But I went to go step on my foot and like I just collapsed. Like I couldn't put weight onto that foot. So they had to wave like my coach had to wave the white flag and everything, and they had to stop the routine, and I was like carried off the floor. And then yeah, it was a whole thing, but it was different because from your experience, because I still had a couple of years, like two years after that left of cheer. It was not the end of my cheerleading career, but I hated being sitting out. Like I hated it so much. It took a huge mental toll on me, but also I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize if they've never experienced something like that is that when I was post-surgery, I was non-weight bearing on that leg for 6 weeks because they actually did have to do a meniscus repair versus clip. So if they did a clip, I would have been able to put weight on my leg right away with crutches, I believe. And then, but because they repaired, I could not put any weight on it for, I think it was 6 weeks. And so crutching across like the campus and everything, like it wasn't just like a mental toll, it was physically exhausting too. Like I would literally crutch back to my room. Thankfully, I was at one of the closer dorms to like the buildings versus like a further away dorm. And so I would literally crutch back to my room to take like a 10-minute nap in between classes because I was so exhausted and it just took so much out of me, mentally, physically, and emotionally. But when I did start rehabbing back to sport, it definitely helped that my boyfriend was going to school to be an athletic trainer, but because he kind of kept me in line. I think I would have been a lot more down in the dumps if he wasn't like encouraging me. But also it was kind of annoying at the time because I'm just like, just let me like be in my sorrows. Like I don't need your toxic positivity right now. But I think it was really hard because you're just so cautious. Like I didn't want it to happen again. Like you so badly don't want to get re-injured and have to be out for the count again, that you are just so cautious about, like for the longest time, I just remember him being like, put weight on that leg, put weight on that leg. Like I'd be standing in the kitchen or something and only have weight on my good leg. And he'd be like, put weight on your other leg, because I just was trying not to, I don't know, mess with it. And so that kind of took a mental toll too, because you're just scared, you're apprehensive, you're leading with your other leg or other arm if someone had an arm injury or something. So yeah, it's a weird experience because yeah, it takes you out mentally, physically, and emotionally. But I got there eventually and learned to not favor one leg over the other. But yeah, it was a long journey. But
that's where it's big to have someone in your corner, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether it be a coach, a significant other who has the experience and the knowledge to help you through it, a friend that has the experience and the knowledge to help you through it, right? Like having someone there every single step of the way is the absolute game changer. So like
Mm-hmm.
we're all coaches, we're all in a position where we can help other people, but I'm sure you guys invest in yourselves the same way that I invest in myself. Like I sure could run myself through a program. I can, do my own macros. I can set my own goals, but I think it's more beneficial for me to have that person in my corner. And I am in one of my busier seasons of life to be a brand new mom and say like, I'm running a business, I'm a new mom, shit hits the fan some days and I just kind of roll with the punches. But like having that person in my corner of like, no, Link, like you can do this. Like I know things are hard right now and I know you're getting beat up. I'm sick right now. Like I know things are tough, but still keep showing up, still keep doing those little things of like, even if it's something as simple as put some weight on that leg, like do this, do that. Like having someone there is the absolute game changer. So I want to take a hot second to just have you guys like tell us a little bit about your program, like drop your socials, give us the rundown so we can continue to support more people. Whoever wants to kick us off.
Boys.
You talked first.
All right. So a little bit about my business. I started Fit Freaks Training. That is my LLC. And the purpose behind that is just because ever since becoming, a coach or really into lifting, a lot of people have made me feel like I'm weird because I like to work out on holidays. Sometimes I like to track my macros on vacation, depending on, what season of life I'm in. And so they always kind of made me feel like a freak for being that way. And so that's why I created Fit Freaks Training. But like I said, I work solely with women who want to learn to love. Like my whole thing is I want to teach you to learn to love yourself as you are now, but also understand that simultaneously you could be working on becoming a better and like higher version of yourself. And I'm definitely like, I take a no BS approach. I will tell it like it is because I'm here to help you, not like baby you and always be your friend all the time. So that's kind of my approach as a coach. My social, you could find me on mostly Instagram. I have a TikTok, but I'm not as good at posting on there, but it's at homerun_fit. So that is me on socials.
I can go next. So I kind of already talked about it. I started my own LLC. It's called Motivated Movement. It's essentially in its beginning stages still because working full time does not allow for me to build it very fast. I'm working on it, and I really want it to morph into be my full-time job, because I'd love to be able to just sit in a facility with a couple squat racks and some turf floor area and a bunch of weights, and just teach people how to, you know, either be better at what their specific sport or activity is, or rehab from an injury to get back to whatever sport or activity that is. And I essentially, based upon the name motivated movement, there's a reason behind every single movement I prescribe or give somebody to do, and there needs to be a motivation behind that movement. This is going to help you because of this reason. So that is the reason for the name. But you can find me on Instagram mostly. I have a TikTok as well, and I'm probably better at Katy at posting on it, but it's just at GAVIN_GOELTZ for both my Instagram and my TikTok.
And YouTube. You've got YouTube videos.
I do
too.
have a YouTube page. It's about 25 videos of more rehab based exercise videos. So, and it's just called Motivated Movement on YouTube. So you should be able to find it on there.
And I have a online coaching business. It's called Dimensional Performance LLC. And my main focus is more so like health coaching, lifestyle coaching, and like weightlifting. So weight programs. I focus a lot on nutrition within my my current scope of practice, since I'm not a dietitian yet. But shortly, probably within the next few months, once I pass the exam, then I will be a dietitian, and I can go a little bit more in depth with nutrition. But I just focus on the lifestyle part of it, and like mindset, and just fitting it in, as well as bodybuilding coaching. And with my bodybuilding coaching, I focus on like health and longevity in the sport. I don't do things like the way that your coach did. I focus on like, let's do this in a healthy manner. Let's focus on your mental health. Let's focus on making this a realistic and sustainable progress for you. Because I know a lot of times a lot of coaches will just go and give you like the chicken, the rice, and the veggies. And you do that, and then you are super restrictive, and then you binge eat and everything after the show, and then like you have that bad taste in your mouth, you have that negative experience. And there's like a time and a place where you kind of have to get super restrictive like that, but the goal is to wait as long as possible to do that, and do the best as you can while still fitting in the foods you like, and making sure it's an enjoyable progress as long as possible, and then knowing when those points are to kind of kick forward a little bit and get a little bit more intense with it and more focused on it. And before any clients ever want to do it, like I make sure to explain like what's ahead for them. Like Katy probably remembers, I was like, this is not going to be easy. Chances are you're gonna not have energy, you're gonna feel tired. There's a very strong mental game, you're gonna have to miss out on some things. And I think some coaches don't explain that to people beforehand, and that's where they fall into it, because they ask people they know who do it, who enjoy doing it, so of course it's going to be positive. But it's just kind of that thing. So I make sure to kind of mesh bodybuilding with lifestyle, and make sure that it's a sustainable process. And my main clientele is not bodybuilders, it's just people who want to be a little bit more focused on physique, but also have a realistic, sustainable lifestyle that they can then sustain that physique. And I kind of took a break from working with clients this year, just with school. I haven't had any in a few months, but now that all the main work is done, I'm going back into taking clients. So if anyone wants to have any physique goals, you can reach out to me. My Instagram is ZCHOMICKI, and my TikTok is the same. I haven't really posted anything in a while on either of those, just because I've been busy, but I'm going to get back into it. But I do post a lot of memes and funny stuff on my Instagram story. So that could be another reason to follow if you want.
And you've likely seen his video pretending to be Batman, because that went viral.
Yeah,
that
it got
did go
over
viral.
500,000 views.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, two things that I have noticed here. One, none of us are really all that great at TikTok, which but number two, not one of you mentioned the name of your podcast. Can we drop podcast?
We do have an Instagram for our podcast. I think we have one or two posts.
I think 2.
We're getting into the balance of posting on our own pages while also creating content for the podcast page. But the name of our podcast is the Barbell Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we also do videos on YouTube. So we have our episodes in video versions on YouTube, and then our social, so Instagram for now, once we get things up and run.
Yeah, the Instagram is the Barbell Effect Podcast.
Yes. And once we get things up and running, then we will probably be over on TikTok, maybe Threads, things like that. Maybe have a Facebook page community.
Beautiful. Well, I'll catch you guys in the next episode.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in with us. For more free content and to stay in touch, be sure to give us a follow. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok, homerun_fit for Katy, Gavin_Geltz for Gavin, and Z Chomicki for Zach.
Also, feel free to email us with any questions or topics you'd like to hear on the pod at thebarbelleffectpod@gmail.com. We'll be sure to link all of this in the show notes for you as well.
Lastly, if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review so others who can benefit from what we offer can find us. Until next week, keep moving, don't eat like an asshole, and fucking stay hydrated.